It is a wine style that blew me away in the past, but I don't taste these wines often enough. White Rioja is still flying under the radar, but you should be aware of these wines as interest in them is picking up. According to the Consejo Regulador of Rioja, white wine only represented less than 10% of the total volume in 2021. However, in 2012 it was only 5%, showing that there was a significant increase in production over the last years. There seems to be a trend towards white wine in this classic red wine region, so let's find out why by tasting these 6 wines blind. I don't know what they are, so let's dive in. Rioja is a big region with 66,000 hectares of vineyards spread out across 100 kilometers east to west. It is one of the most famous wine growing regions in Spain, but most people know it for their red wines, which can range in quality from entry level to excellent. But their white wines are pretty much unknown to most wine drinkers. Producers can use up to 9 different grape varieties, but the most widely planted one by far is Viura, which is also known as Macabeo. It became the dominant white grape variety in the 1970s, and it is now planted on 68% of all of the white wine vineyards, but only 6% of the total of all vineyards in Rioja. Amongst the other varieties are the international grapes Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay, but also Spanish grape varieties like Verdejo and Tempranillo Blanco. White Riojas are traditionally aged in oak and can show pronounced oaky, toasty flavors. While the regulations only require producers to keep their wines in barrel for a fairly short amount of time, some producers leave them in the barrel for years and therefore produce truly age-worthy wines. The region also follows the traditional classification for white wines, meaning that wines are classified by the time they were aged upon release. Granja wines have to be aged for at least 6 months in barrel. Reserva wines have to be aged for at least 6 months in barrel as well, but 2 years in total. So the winery has to age the wine in bottle if they only keep it for 6 months in barrel. The Gran Reserva wines have to be aged for 4 years in total, but also only for 6 months minimum in barrel. So let's dive into these 6 wines. I don't know what they are. Well, I mean, I know that they are white Riojas, but I don't know who the producers are. So let's find out whether this wine style might be the next big thing. All right, let's start off with wine number 1. By the way, people have been asking me what this means on my jug here. It says Surfle mischt nit Suffe. I don't 100% know what that means because that's a strange German dialect, but I think it means that you should enjoy your wine instead of just getting drunk. That's kind of my interpretation, at least, of this sentence. And as I am in explanation mode, I also want to mention again that I always put the name of the wine glass that I'm using into the description, because this is the most common question I get. Which glass are you tasting from? It's down there. So just check it out. And I also always put the wines down there together with the wine searcher link, so you can find them in your market if you want. So as usual, I'm going to rinse out my glass to make sure that that there's no stuff in there, no dust, no detergent, no nothing, just wine. All right, the color is light golden, I would say. I mean, white Riojas can be really dark. They can be more towards the brown because some of those wines have been aged for years, and therefore the white wines kind of change color from yellow to brownish. This, however, looks fairly light colored for white Rioja. It has a really nice flavor. It smells of ripe pears, apples. It's delicate, so the fruit flavor is delicate, and there's also some spice from the oak, but it's also delicate. So this is not one of those in-your-face wines that you sometimes get in that region. This is a little bit more elegant and, like I said, delicate. On the palate, it is intense. It has a little bit of grippiness. It has a touch of saltiness. It has this thing that I often get with white Rioja, which is salted caramel. So it has a touch of bitterness, touch of sweetness, touch of saltiness, and that can be really delicious. This feels like a lighter but still really exciting white Rioja style. It's probably a crianza to Reserva. It doesn't feel like it has had a lot of aging, But yeah, it's still delicious, quite expressive and really interesting. So I'm going to rate this 90 points. I think this is good. Good stuff. Good start. Talk about start. I recently launched my independent e-learning platform, cellarclass.com. It is the place for you to learn more about wine by watching my video-based courses. They are educational, entertaining, and accessible. And yeah, just check them out by clicking on the link in the description and having a look at Cellar Class. So let's move on to wine number 2. A little bit more golden in color. Yeah, this has a golden touch, that's for sure. A little darker, but not all that much darker than the previous wine. On the nose, it feels really different. I think it doesn't really show a lot of oaky flavors. It's more fruity with some funky notes as well. So yeah, an interesting nose. There's more ripe fruit character, like mango, a little bit of passion fruit as well. It's not super intense, but it's riper. On the palate, it has quite a lot of intensity and grip, good freshness. I mean, White Rioja is not famous for its acidity. Those wines tend to have low levels of acidity, in my opinion, but this actually has a little bit more moderate acidity levels, more freshness. Yeah, there's good grip there. I think it tastes different than most White Riojas I've had, but it's a really good wine. I mean, is this classic? Difficult to say, I think, but I think it's a little different. It's a little bit wilder, maybe, a little bit more hands-off, that's what it feels like, and less oaky, that's for sure. But due to its intensity on the palate, I'm going to rate it 91 points. Good stuff. All right, let's move on to wine number 3, which is in a bottle that feels like a Riesling bottle, really. I don't know whether someone's trying to trick me here. But yeah, Rioja is a little bit weird in that way because some wines are bottled in Bordeaux bottles, others are bottled in Burgundy bottles, and apparently some are bottled in Rheingau Riesling bottles. So again, golden in color, there appears to be a little bit of age or exposure to oak. Oak also adds a little bit of color to the wine, especially new oak barrels do give off a little bit of color, and the wines appear more golden when they are aged in barrels. This is also due to the exposure to oxygen when a wine is aged in barrel, but it's also the charred inside that gives off some of its color to the wine. Yeah, and there's definitely some charred oak flavor in this wine. So this smells of oranges, mango, a little bit of ripe pear as well. There is some toastiness there, a little bit of chocolate flavor, a little bit of coconut aroma. It's quite complex though, and really well combined. The oak is pronounced, but there's also good fruit flavor there. So this feels fairly harmonious. On the palate, this feels concentrated and rich. This is more of a Reserva to Gran Reserva style. And for me here, the oak comes out a little too much. Maybe this is still a bit too young, but yeah, it's a little hot on the palate and it feels a little bit over extracted. So this is difficult to judge because I think this is a serious wine and the winery has invested heavily into producing something concentrated and rich, but it still feels a little bit off. Maybe it's a little too young. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and I'm going to rate it 92 points, thinking that over time this will actually become more harmonious. The finish is salty and delicious. I mean, there's certainly something there. So let's move on to wine number 4. That's really golden here. Look at that color. I mean, that's pure liquid gold. Well, not really, but it's gold. So this has a really interesting nose. It is not super oaky, that's for sure. There is a little bit of caramel flavor coming through, but also a hint of mintiness or eucalyptus. There's also this apricot and pear flavor that comes through. So it feels like a concentrated and rich wine, but not as oaky as the previous wine, for example. On the palate, there's this great concentration and grippiness. This is really well balanced with great acidity and a long finish. So this is absolutely delicious. So I'm going to rate this 95 points. I think this is really beautiful, really well balanced. There's not too much of the oakiness. There's not too much of the alcohol. It's just all quite harmonious. So next up we have wine number 5. Ui, that looks like a urine sample, like morning urine. Well, sorry. Let's call it amber in color. This is really, really dark. This is not yellow at all anymore. Oh my God, this is quite something. So it smells of bruised apple, ripe pear, caramel, a little bit of spice. So there's a lot going on here. On the palate, this is extremely grippy, fresh, vibrant, very complex. You know, this is just very different, a different kind of white wine. It's quite something. There's this delicate peachiness, apricot notes, lots of grip, good freshness, saltiness. So this is really touching every bit of my tongue. I'm going to rate this 98 points. It's absolutely delicious, a great wine. So before I reveal the wines, let's finish this off with wine number 6. So this is more yellow to golden in color, not as amber, that's for sure. No morning urine. It smells a little bit reductive. There's some citrus, orange and apple notes coming through, and quite a lot of oakiness, vanilla notes, a little bit of cloves, cinnamon, this kind of flavors. On the palate, this shows good concentration, a little bit of heat coming through as well, a little bit of grippiness, but overall I think it's pretty well balanced. Okay, this wine is in a difficult spot. I mean, the previous wine was extraordinary and this is very good, but not at the same level. But I'm going to rate this 90 points. I think it is a good, accessible wine. It's a little lighter, a little bit more cheerful, but still really well made. All right, this was exciting. A tasting of white Rioja, but very different styles with very different expressions. So we had the more light and fruity kind of wines. We had extremely oaky and concentrated wines. We had very complex, really oxidatively aged wines. So there was something there for everyone. Overall, you can say that Rioja represents a wine style that is less fruit driven. The wines are not very aromatic. I mean, sometimes you have intense oak flavors, but the fruit itself is usually a little bit more delicate. What is really exciting about Rioja, in my opinion, is the texture. So the wines can be really oily, rich, salty, slightly bitter. And that is something that I really enjoy when there's a lot going on in here. I will certainly drink more white Rioja, but now let's reveal those wines. Let's start with number 1, okay? So wine number 1 was quite delicious. Let's find out what it was. Luis Canas Vinas Viejas. Never seen that label before, so I don't really know anything about it, but it's a Conseja, so it's not a Reserva or Gran Reserva or Crianza. And it was pretty good. I recommend that. So let's move on to number 2, which I thought was a little bit more funky, a little bit more wild. And it was, no way, it was Remelluri Blanco 2021. And this, I think, is regarded as one of the absolute best white Riojas. I thought it was quite nice, but I thought it was a bit funkier than I would have expected it to be. Really good wine, but yeah, I didn't think it was great. Let's move on to wine number 3, the Riesling. And it wasn't a Riesling. What is this? I can hardly read the label. It's called Monopole Blanco Seco Reserva Compañía Vinícola del Norte de España. So this is a Reserva style, really cool label, I think, but I don't know this wine, but I liked it. This is probably a style that people are more familiar with when it comes to white Rioja. This is really oaky, intense kind of white wine. But yeah, I think this certainly has potential. So let's move on to wine number 4 and let's find out what it is. Alegre Valganon Blanco 2022. All right. I didn't know this label either, but I quite liked it. The only issue here is the clear glass bottle. I'm not a fan of that. You need to keep this bottle wrapped in one of those. otherwise you get light strike. If you want to find out more about that, check out the video. I'll link it up somewhere up there. So let's check this one out. I'm really excited to find out what it is. I thought it was delicious. All right. Another wine that I'm completely unfamiliar with. So this is the Suane Blanco Reserva 2017. So it's 7 years old and it has 13% of alcohol and it's a Reserva style and it's absolutely delicious. This is fascinating. I just Googled it and it apparently is 30 euros in Germany. So this is a steal. I'm definitely going to buy a case or two. So last but not least, we have this wine, which I quite enjoyed, but after this, it just kind of didn't get to shine as much. And this is a heavy bottle. It's Flor de Muga Rioja. Okay, so this is the Flor de Muga Rioja Blanco 2020 Reserva. A serious wine, but after this, it just kind of couldn't compete with this. However, this is actually a few euros more expensive. I mean, it's 35 euros, not very expensive either. But yeah, I mean, this shows there's a lot of value in white Rioja as well. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like it down here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. My question of the day is, what are your thoughts on white Rioja? Have you ever tasted any? Do you like them or not? Let me know down below. I hope I see you guys again very soon. Until then, stay thirsty. Hey, this is Konstantin. I'm just packing up and I realized that Compañía Vinícola del Norte de España is actually CVNE, a company that I'm familiar with and I've tasted their wines before. I didn't realize that early on. But that goes to show that you always keep on learning when it comes to wine. All right, thanks.